Before we dive in today, are you on LinkedIn? I'm a big fan of LinkedIn for Nonprofits. It's a suite of tools, free resources, and exclusive discounts curated just for you, nonprofits. According to their research, 85% of nonprofit professionals say LinkedIn helps them achieve their organizational goals. And that's not by chance. Need to find that perfect program director? Want to build relationships with corporate donors? Or are you looking to build an engaged community of supporters? LinkedIn for Nonprofits gives you proven tools to make it happen. Visit nonprofit.linkedin.com to unlock your exclusive nonprofit discounts and resources today. You can also visit the link in the show notes. This podcast is proudly brought to you by LinkedIn for Nonprofits. Now, let's get to today's episode.
I ran the science and policy shop at Surfrider for 16 years before I took over. So my thought leadership during that phase or towards the end of that phase, so it was really about the issues. It was like I was a policy wonk. So I was going to coastal zone management conferences and talking about Surfrider's work or the issues from our perspective. Surfrider has 200 chapters and clubs across the United States, thousands of sort of volunteer leaders, and about 60 or 70,000 volunteers who show up at our activity. That's an audience that I want to speak to, which is like the next ring out.
I'm Dana Snyder, your host of the Missions to Movements podcast. And my path to philanthropy has been anything but traditional. This show is your weekly mastermind, designed to give you the ideas, insights, and support you need to push the boundaries of what's been done before in nonprofit marketing and fundraising. Whether you're looking to build a magnetic monthly giving program, elevate your personal brand, or create partnerships that amplify your impact, this space is for you. I'll bring you solo episodes and conversations with industry leaders offering actionable strategies and fresh perspectives that will move you and your mission forward. Let's turn your mission into a movement. Hey, listeners, welcome back to Missions to Movements. Today's episode is pretty special because you might not know this, some of you do, but I am a Florida native and I grew up spending many, many weekends at the beach, specifically Siesta Key and Lido Key, if any of you are familiar in Sarasota, Florida. And I'm a Pisces. I'm a water baby. So spending the time out on the boat and in the ocean and in pools is where I love to spend my time. And so I have been a longtime fan of the work of any organization that's doing ocean protection, conservation efforts, and Surfrider Foundation has been at the top of that list. And so today, Chad Nelsen, CEO of Surfrider Foundation, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dana. I agree. The beach is the best.
It is the best. And since 1998, 27 years ago, that's wild. You have been a part of the Surfrider Foundation. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the organization, they protect the world's ocean and beaches through activism and community action. And what's really cool is they were founded by surfers in 1984, really with the focus on water quality, coastal preservation, and reducing plastic pollution. So, Chad, just to kick us off, there are many amazing causes doing great work in the ocean space. What made the Surfrider Foundation really stand out to you and make it be the place that you wanted to dedicate 27 plus years of your life?
You know, I've dedicated pretty much my entire professional career, and I'm a grad student intern to CEO story. And I fell in love with the Surfrider Foundation for a couple of different reasons. As a surfer and a beachgoer, I love the focus around trying to get people who engage in ocean and coastal recreation involved in protecting these places. Like you opened in the intro, so many people are so passionate about our oceans and coasts, but not enough of them are engaged in stewardship and protection. So the idea of turning on that crowd was super appealing. It's not theoretical, it's real to people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the other thing is this community, grassroots community orientation, I think is particularly effective. So the way Surfrider creates change, I think, is uniquely effective.
Yes. And I know we're going to talk about your TEDx talk because I think that really eloquently and succinctly, as you have to do in a TEDx talk, has to get that point across very quickly. And so I want to kind of dive into a couple of different topics, per se, in our conversation today. And one is personal branding, because I think having strong leadership that's able to go out there and talk about these issues to the mass and very niche audiences and local audiences can be really important. But sometimes that's a hard hurdle to get over internally, especially if you're not a very outward spokesperson. So nearly 11 years ago, you became CEO.
Yep.
How important back then was your personal thought leadership, and how has that evolved over the past decade?
Yeah, it's a good question. I ran the science and policy shop at Surfrider for 16 years before I took over. So my thought leadership during that phase, or towards the end of that phase, was really, I was going to science conferences. So it was really about the issues. It was like I was a policy wonk. So I was going to coastal zone management conferences and talking about Surfrider's work or the issues from our perspective. And it definitely shifted when I took over as CEO. And, I think one important part of thought leadership is thinking about your audience. I kind of have three, I would argue, at Surfrider as the leader. One is the staff. We have 80 people working here, which is more of an internal focus, like what's the organization doing? Right. Surfrider has 200 chapters and clubs across the United States, thousands of sort of volunteer leaders, and about 60 or 70,000 volunteers who show up at our activity, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And so that's an audience that I want to speak to, which is like the next ring out.
And I didn't recognize the chapters until I actually met somebody here in Atlanta at a local Patagonia event.
Yeah.
They showed up and I saw that she had the name tag of Surfrider. And I was like, I didn't know that Surfrider had a location in Atlanta. And she's like, well, we're a chapter. And I was like, oh, I did not comprehend that was part of the framework of the organization.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And so that's an important audience. These are people who actually show up and get the work done. And then third is obviously sort of the general public, or, the nonprofit world, or sort of the LinkedIn world. I think over my 11 years, it's kind of evolved from focused internally. It continues to broaden as I sort of, settle into my sort of leadership. And I think, from my perspective, I've really been focused on, there are hundreds of Surfrider people right now at the beach somewhere in the United States, Florida, Maine, Oregon, San Diego. And so kind of telling those stories from the front lines of beaches is, I think, something in that perspective is part of the content that I want to share. And also sort of what's happening real time along our coastlines, and then sort of Surfriders. We're a solution-oriented organization, so talking about what the challenges are, but also focusing on solutions. I don't have a super organized, strategic, content sharing strategy. I'm not
okay, yes, I was just going to ask you that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm not like, oh, I got to do a LinkedIn post every week, or, and some of it, the organization's doing a lot of that. And so I sort of fit into some of the organizational communications, but I would say it's more organic.
Okay. Is it just I think I have something to say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write something, and you have LinkedIn and Instagram. Would you say those are the primary two channels that you focus on?
Yeah. And increasingly, which I think is really interesting to watch, is Blue Sky.
Blue Sky?
Yes. Blue Sky is the new Twitter.
Oh, okay. This is probably why I don't know about it, because I haven't been on Twitter or X in forever.
Yeah, it's really interesting because sort of in the decline of Twitter, a number of alternatives popped up, Threads, something like Mastodon, which I don't really use, and Blue Sky. And I would argue Blue Sky was sort of sitting idle for the last 2 years, just since the election is exploded. And I think it has 26 million users now. And for me in particular, the science community is there. Okay. So the private scientists and the communicators, and increasingly the media. So it's becoming sort of the alternative to Twitter.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check this out. Listeners, I didn't know this. We learned something new. Chad brought it.
That's right. Check it out. It's really interesting. And it's kind of like early days of social media. It's growing and evolving like right in front of your eyes. So
is it the same format, short text based?
Short
usually?
text, links.
Okay.
I'm by no means like an expert, but I think the way the algorithm is organized is different. So it can be chronological. So it's not like manipulating.
Yeah.
It's more real time than I think Threads. Thus far, it has a culture of being nice and having civic.
Let's hope that stays.
I know, I do too. Like healthy conversation, not toxic conversation.
Yes. Okay. So there is the social side, as always, of thought leadership.
Social piece, there's LinkedIn. And like, kind of back to your question, there are moments in time, like after the election, where I feel compelled to kind of enter Surfrider or my perspective into what happened. And my filter is, what does it mean for our coasts and oceans? Because that's sort of our sweet spot and my sweet spot. So yeah, it's more about, there are moments in time where I feel we have something to offer, or something's happening inside the Surfrider world that I feel is worth sharing. So part of it is looking at the landscape of work that's happening.
Cultural moments. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe either connecting dots or saying, hey, this is something that I feel like not enough attention's being paid to, but is really important.
Amazing. What about the strategic thought of being on podcasts like this one or stages? Is that something that you work with your team on or you are doing outbound for?
Not a ton of outbound. We get a lot of requests. Surfrider has a strong brand identity, which, we'll get into at the partnerships too. But, and it's also interesting because we sort of intersect surfing. So it's on like the World Surf League's podcast, which is like the Pro Surfing League podcast, ocean conservation, right? And then sort of this sort of grassroots community organizing. So we kind of sit in some interesting buckets.
And you could also be definitely just speaking in the broader like social impact, amazing marketing partnerships, like not even necessarily in those buckets. I think to your point about having a strong brand, that could lead yourself just in the social impact space too, in a more general sense.
That's right. And I'm definitely sort of doing seemingly more of that, talking about leadership, talking about sort of these more how to run a successful NGO or ocean conservation organization.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more compelling than having the attention, especially if you're in person with people or on a podcast like this where, listener, like we are in your earpods. We are with you on a walk. We are with you on a run. Maybe you're doing your laundry. But to have someone's attention for 30, 40 minutes to be on a stage with sole attention focused is a very intimate experience. And I think has the opportunity to really create a deeper understanding of the organization, have respect for the person, the leader running the organization, and then feel compelled to possibly do something about it, i.e. donate, do something local in your community, right? And so I think over the past decade, do you think that doing the podcast, doing in-person speaking events, have you seen a change in the organization from doing those?
Absolutely. And I totally agree that it's important. A lot of our major supporters will tell you that leadership of the organization is incredibly important to my commitment to the organization. It has this responsibility, but also this opportunity. And I think we as humans look to leaders for issues at times. I mean, one of the most unlikely and most influential is Greta Thunberg, right? Like, young schoolgirl, but there was something about her conviction that captivated people. And now she's on a global stage talking about these issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And talk about, global stages. If you, listener, have not watched Chad's TEDx talk, please just search for it on YouTube. I think naturally people have a fascination with how to even approach a TEDx opportunity. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a story of how did that experience happen? Did you enter? Do you have to get accepted? And then I would like to dive into actually crafting the talk.
It's interesting. So I'm not really like generally one of those people that says like, if you manifest it, it will happen. But in this case, it did. I had a goal of giving a TEDx talk. That was something I wanted to do from like a thought leadership perspective. And most importantly, I kind of wanted to share and validate Surfrider's model. That was kind of the goal behind it. I got invited to give one a couple years ago and it didn't work, the timing. And Laguna Beach is my hometown. So I grew up there. The guy, Rich Gurman, who organized it, is like a friend and a colleague. So it kind of fell in my lap, and it was across the street from the lifeguard tower where I lifeguarded as
Oh my gosh.
And so it really was kind of meant to be. And the story that I told about sort of the impact of marine conservation was right there.
Wow. So listeners, I hope you will watch the video footage. I will link to the TEDx talk in the show notes. But you start out with this beautiful imagery of you as a kid in the ocean, learning about it. And then you transition into the framework that you're talking about, local community activists and the framework of the Surfrider Foundation. And the talk is 11 minutes, right?
Yep. Yeah.
11 minutes. Okay. That is a very tight time frame to get a point across. And I know that's the point of a TED Talk. How did you prepare for that?
It's really funny. I loved all but one part of it. I hired a storytelling coach.
Okay.
I can't recommend that enough. It was a really fun process. And a good friend of mine, Sachi Cunningham, who's like a phenomenal journalist and ocean photographer, really championing women's big wave surfing, she gave a really compelling TEDx talk. And I saw hers. And then an organization called the Million Person Project that I'd actually worked with at a Patagonia event. I didn't realize it at the time. They did TED Talk coaching. So I worked with them. And they really were good at sort of honing in your story and your values and focusing on your audience. And so crafting the talk was really fun and kind of honing. And, of course, the first version of it was like 16 minutes long. And so then it was a matter of sort of editing it down and really trying to get to the salient points, and then we got it down to essentially 10 or 11 minutes, which was the goal. And then the funny thing I do a fair amount of public speaking. I've been doing this work for a long time, so I can usually kind of write an outline, and I've got kind of canned speeches that I've given over enough times that I can kind of just, freestyle it. And this was rote memorization. I probably had the thing written 3 months before the talk, and then I had to memorize. It turns out memorizing 11 minutes is hard.
That would be really hard.
It was the hardest thing I've done in a while. So I was like, oh man, and then to be able to give the talk and actually think about it, not just spit back the memorization. Was also challenging.
And have the intonation and the pauses that you did. And I'm I prepare, but not over prepare because I like to have a little bit of that natural, but you can't when you have.
It was like the time.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened, which was interesting, is the screen's behind you. Yes. And you have a monitor in front of you so you can see where you're at on your slides. And unlike other talks, like if I cheat, right, I have a bunch of bullet points on a slide that just remind me what to say. It's like the PowerPoint cop-out. I didn't have those. I just had blanks. So it was either interesting pictures or nothing. So the timing was really important. I was the first talk and the monitor didn't work. So I walked out there and, there's 200 people in the audience and the monitors, and I was like, okay. So I actually had to kind of look back or kind of glance back. You can notice it if you go back and watch a couple times to make sure I was at the right spot. So I had that extra little challenge.
I couldn't tell.
Well, it was fun. And I do feel really strongly about this model that we have. And so it was pretty fun to craft a story around that.
I love that. For leaders who are listening that might want to do something like this, maybe it's not a TED Talk, but it's getting out in the community and doing more public speaking. If they're not getting the inbound requests like you are, how would you suggest that they approach that when they're reaching out to people to maybe speak at an event? When was the last time you used LinkedIn? If you're thinking, when I was job hunting, I totally get it. But as the new year begins, LinkedIn is the one platform I am all in on. Why? LinkedIn is so much more than a job platform, especially for nonprofits. I have seen firsthand how powerful it can be for growing your community and your impact. Did you know that 75% of surveyed nonprofit professionals use LinkedIn to market their organizations to potential supporters? That's huge. Head over to nonprofit.linkedin.com to discover all the ways LinkedIn can amplify your mission. Because whether you're looking to connect with donors, find amazing volunteers, or establish yourself as a thought leader in your space, LinkedIn for Nonprofits has your back. I love that they've created this incredible collection of free resources specifically for nonprofits like yours. And I wouldn't be telling you all of this if I hadn't experienced the impact myself. Click the link in the show notes or head to nonprofit.linkedin.com to start diving in. And trust me, you're about to have a LinkedIn tab open on your computer at all times. Now back to our conversation.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, I think LinkedIn is becoming an increasingly good way to kind of define yourself.
Yep.
As you know, there's a lot of podcasts out there and they're looking for content. So I think, there's certainly some of the podcasts like the WSL podcast I mentioned where we reached out to them and said, hey, we'd love to get on your show. So if you see places where there's audiences that you think your story or message can connect, I don't think there's any reason not to just reach out to those folks directly.
Yep. I reached out to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Yeah, it's funny. LinkedIn and Strava have become like my most unlikely and favorite social media platforms.
Strava? I don't think I know that one either.
It's like an exercise platform.
Oh, okay.
You track your workouts. So I follow my friends and we try to encourage each other to get out there and do more exercise.
Well, and what it is it's community.
Yeah, it's a huge community. Yeah. And I think both, and not Strava, I don't think, but certainly with LinkedIn, having your resume attached to your comments, I think ups the level. People are a little bit more thoughtful about what they say and how they say it.
Good point. The credibility there and the trust factor can happen. What do you think is your recommendation also to leaders if they're hesitating getting into personal branding, thought leadership for their organization?
I really appreciated that question because I don't get up in the morning and say, how am I going to promote myself? In that sense, I'm like a reluctant thought leader. Yeah. I have a lot to share, but I'm not necessarily like motivated by brand. And some people are, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's important. So the way I think about it is I'm like, this is in service to the organization that I'm 100%. Leading and the cause that I feel so passionately about. And so for me, it's like, hey, this is part of the job. And so I think that's a way of framing it. If you're not like, hey, I'm not one of those look at me people, because I do think it is important and it is valuable. And if you're a leader in a nonprofit organization, there's no question you have something valuable to share.
Absolutely. All the lived experiences. And I think to your point, if you're not somebody who's like saying, oh, look at me, it's look at my organization, look at the work that's happening. And I am just a vehicle to help share those. And because I have some credibility and experience and relationships with people and the fact that you're a person, you're not a organization. So therefore there is more trust hearing from people. Donate to people, right? And people donate to things that they've lived through. And so that's why I open with talking about my personal nostalgia with the water, right? I'm going to give because I can relate to a lived experience. So I love that. I think it shouldn't feel boasting. One of my favorite people who I think does such a beautiful job in the for-profit sector is Sarah Blakely with Spanx. And she is her true, funny, hysterical self telling like she does like sales deals. She has a lipstick and a napkin in her car trying to do like, she shares that she wears stuff backwards when she gets on national television. Like she's just like, this is who I am.
Right.
Because I love her. I so badly want to buy these new sneaks shoes that she's made, these sneaker heels. But anyways, that segues into, I think also corporate partners are also ran by people and people want to do business with good people doing good things. You have, I'm just going to list a few. Alaska Airlines, Cliff Bars, GoPro, Yeti, Pinterest, O'Neill, Reef, REI. just to name a few of the incredible logos and brands that are on your partnerships page. And just on Giving Tuesday, which is very relevant, Reef was your match partner. What do you think has created the values and brand alignment for these really meaningful partnerships over the years?
Reef is the sandal company too. So like they're a beach product, right? So it makes a lot of sense. I remember reading a while back that Scott Harrison from Charity Water, right? One of the sort of, leading fundraising sort of charities out there, said that I'm not looking to other nonprofits. I'm looking to Nike to think about branding. And I totally agree with him. I think brand is really important because it's just a way that we as humans filter the world. And you're trying to compete for attention with everything else that's out there, whether it's a pair of sneakers or a TV show or a podcast or a nonprofit. And so I think, we spend a fair amount of time and energy at Surfrider thinking about our brand, like how we're communicating that brand, what it stands for. Are we being consistent in sharing those values? And for us, those values are a passion for the coast, doing something about it, rolling up your sleeves, being solution oriented. So it's a pretty positive and compelling message. And there's no question we have the value of surfing as this super charismatic activity. And we have people out doing things on the beach, cleanups and water testing and planting dunes. And so there's ways people can get involved. So I think those are the ingredients that have led to us being attractive to these partners. So they like the brand affiliation. They almost look at it as a collab.
Oh, I love that. Was it always that way? I mean, think late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't what it is today.
No, it's interesting. I think it's gone through cycles like everything. In the early 80s, when Surfrider was just getting off the ground, the surf industry was smaller, having a lot of success. So they were supporting Surfrider. I feel like the corporate partnerships thing drifted away and then it's come back. I think as, I feel like we're in some other cycle right now, but this idea of corporate social responsibility has become increasingly important and customers want brands to do more than just make money, which is good. They should. And so, they're looking for ways to demonstrate to the world that they care. And you learn pretty quickly that some really care and some just want to look like they care. So you got to navigate that.
Yeah, for sure. There has to be a very thoughtful team process to really curate these relationships and make sure, to your point, that you're partnering with the people who really care. Is there some internal matrix system that you look at to say yes? Like they might approach you and maybe they are the Nike of the world for you. But then is there something internally, there's an internal check for your team? Okay.
We say no more than yes to brands that approach us. And, we're an advocacy organization. So we're out there trying to pass laws and policies to reduce plastic pollution, for example. And so we don't want to appear biased. So we won't take money from a brand that uses single-use plastic water bottles because we're trying to get rid of those. So we want them to be brands that we feel like are being good environmental stewards. They don't have to be perfect or no impact because there's no such thing, but they got to be, Alaska Airlines, for example, people are like, they're an airline, they're contributing to global warming. We're working with them to get rid of plastic on the plane.
Yeah.
So we want the customer experience to be plastic free, or as close to that as we can get. So we do vet them very carefully. We also look at their sort of pollution and human rights records because we want to align with brands that have values that we align with ours, and then their sort of sustainability and environmental responsibility. Those are kind of the things. And then it's got to be, we want it to be a meaningful partnership because like Reef, who's been a long time partner of ours, these quick hits, we always laugh on April 1st, the phone starts ringing because everyone's like, oh, Earth Day is in 3 weeks. Can we partner with you? And these sort of quick hits, they can be revenue for you, but they're not like meaningful.
Right.
If you can build a partnership over time, it actually is better for everyone. What you want is, we're a charity, we need a donation, we need funding. A lot of these brands have huge platforms. So they broadcasting to their audience is of value to us. And you want them to be able to tell their audience, hey,
we care about this.
Right. We're good. Reef sells sandals that people use to go to the beach. So they want to be stewards of the beach. And that's why they're supporting us. And then you ultimately hope it's good for their business, that, that partnership benefits them. And that's how you get to this sort of win-win-win thing, which is We're doing better. They're doing better. The world's doing better.
That's right.
If we can get there, then everybody is having success.
That's right. And I always say, don't be afraid to pitch that dream partnership if you can approach it with this in mind. If you can talk to or ask them, what are your business goals? What are your values? What are you trying to do? And if you know that you have something to contribute, there might be something there. And do not discount yourself because you're a nonprofit, because you might have a smaller audience than them. You are extremely valuable to them with the community that you serve, and definitely offer something. So thank you for outlining those.
One more really important thing too is Surfrider has a decent sized audience. A lot of nonprofits do. And there's a ton of loyalty, that audience, and healthy skepticism. They're not the easiest audience to, they're serious about your organization. And so another warning sign is you don't want a corporate partnership to come to you to market to your audience. Because we get that a lot. Hey, can you help us sell our wares to your audience? And in return, we'll give you money. So you're just a marketing channel. That's a red flag, I think. What you want, because that tells me they don't really care.
Yeah.
They see you as an email list
right.
or a social media channel. So what you want is for them to actually tell their audience that they're doing good with you. And of course, we will then share with our audience that they're supporting us, but that's got to be secondary, not primary. It's a good red flag for anyone working on partnerships.
That's a really good point.
We've learned it the hard way.
It's a really good point. The lived experiences that you can share is really important. That's a personal branding story that you could share, I'm sure, on LinkedIn. Right. Do's and don'ts of corporate partnerships.
Exactly.
So looking ahead, something that I see all over the site is about membership of Surfrider. And of course, I am a big fan. I am currently wearing my Obsessed with Monthly Giving shirt. We're in a new year, and local activism is literally the core of DNA of what you do. Is there a big focus on monthly giving, recurring giving with the organization? And what has that been like in the past decade of working there? The importance of it.
Yeah. So, we're this grassroots membership-based organization. So small dollar donors, members, and volunteers is like the machine that runs this organization. So we really do care. We have had, I would argue, mediocre sort of technology and strategy around building membership. And it's been growing and stagnating and, vacillating over time. And in the last maybe 18 months or 2 years, we've really invested in better technology and strategy around reoccurring donors and monthly donors. And the results are staggering.
Wow. I know you use Fundraise Up.
Yeah, we use Fundraise Up.
Great.
It's an amazing tool. That's been game-changing for us. A one-time donor at Surfrider, first-time donor, has a 38% response rate, right? It's a recurring rate. So there's 38% chance they'll re-up. Our sort of average membership is about 51%, which is higher than industry standard, which is in the mid 40s. So, a tiny majority renews every year, right? So we're just over half, but there's so much churn in that, right? You get 100 donors, we keep 51, we lose 49.
That's a lot.
Our rate with automatic renewal, monthly or annual, is 91%.
Amazing.
So it doubles.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's night and day.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting, and I think this is true for a lot of organizations, is when we survey people and say, hey, why didn't you re-up with Surfrider? It's not something we did or that we're ineffective. It's I simply forgot.
Yeah. I believe it.
Gets buried, as they all do. and they see it and I'll get to that next week. I don't want to do it right now. And then it's gone.
Gone. Yeah.
Despite sending people you're about to expire, you're almost expired, you're expired, expired last week, all that stuff that we all get, people just can't be bothered. So if we have monthly or reoccurring donations, they stick with us because most people like and support what we're up to. And
That's right.
It has been absolutely game-changing for us. I think the other thing, and we're not there yet because it's still a very small percentage of our total number of donors. It's growing every month. I don't know. It's still less than 10%, is that it smooths out your revenue curve. So 40 to 50% of our donations come in October, November, and December. So it's this hockey stick.
Wow.
That makes your revenue planning and modeling really challenging. And if we had all those people monthly, it would be perfectly smooth in theory. So it actually makes your cash flow and you're just running your finances month to month significantly smoother and predictable.
Yes. You mentioned Scott Harrison earlier. He was quoted saying something, it might have been in a podcast. Somebody said, would you prefer a $50,000 flat donation grant? And he said, no, I would prefer it as $50,000 across our recurring donors to go up. Because then that is, if you have that $50,000 for 1 year, then you're off for the next year. And then you can't do it. You can't do anything about that. I would rather have that in smaller increments where, to your point, you have this very high retention rate, low churn rate. And over the course of years, I talk about this all the time, I've been a monthly donor for Dressember. They're an anti-human trafficking organization for 4 going on 5 years.
Yep.
And I have consistently given, never questioned, love getting the emails from them, never questioned stopping my gift. Because I know my $24 and some odd change compounded by hundreds of other people is able to do a whole lot more than if I gave $100 as a one-off gift. And to your point, I have a 20-month-old. My life is really busy. It is going to be hard to get my attention again. It just is.
Yeah. No, it is. And, if we do something wrong or we take a stance on an issue that somebody doesn't like, they can go cancel it. But at least their number one reason won't be, I just didn't get around to it.
Oh, yeah. That's the worst thing that you want to hear. Okay. So that's amazing. So needless to say, monthly giving is going to be on the forefront of 2025 planning.
Yes. And, just for like one Starbucks cup of coffee, right? A month, you can make a meaningful difference in whatever your charity is, Surfrider or somebody else. So
that's right. Amazing. Chad, thank you so much for your time today, your advocacy, the work, your voice for speaking up for these issues. Where can people learn more about Surfrider and yourself and connect with you?
Yeah, surfrider.org or Surfrider on socials. And then Chad Nelsen, Nelsen. You can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram or Blue Sky.
Awesome. Blue Sky. Now I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah, you got to go check it out.
Amazing. Chad, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Missions to Movements. If you enjoyed our conversation and found it helpful, I would love for you to take a moment to leave a review wherever you're listening. Your feedback helps us reach more change makers like you and continue bringing impactful stories and strategies to the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button too, so you'll never miss an episode. And until next time, keep turning your mission into a movement.